the decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq, too. Anyway, 75.
Did you see George Bush saying Iraq instead of Ukraine? What a Freudian slip. And to be fair to Bush, he kind of owned it. He's kind of just sort of chuckled and laughed and said, yeah, Iraq as well. And I can remember when George Bush came to power. That was kind of the first time I was ever really aware of the American election. And it was George Bush against Al Gore. I didn't even know who Al Gore was, but I knew I wanted him to win. I knew I didn't want George Bush Jr. to become the next president. Isn't it weird? We had George Bush Sr., then Bill Clinton, then George W. Bush, then we nearly had Hillary Clinton, and then after Obama, of course we had Trump, but we nearly had Jeb Bush, another Bush, and we also nearly had Hillary Clinton. Again, she went for it. So you can understand why someone like Donald Trump ended up becoming president, because people were so fed up with the establishment. And that's what George Bush is, establishment. And back at that time, as someone on the left, it almost felt good to have an enemy, someone to aim at, someone to hate on. And I really did hate George W. Bush, and I was proven to be right. The guy invaded Iraq and Afghanistan based on a bunch of lies, but tragically, Tony Blair, the British Prime Minister, hero of the left, supposedly, got caught up in all of that, was part of the coalition of the willing, and that was really saddening. And I still am not over the fact that Tony Blair let us down in that way, embarrassed us on the world stage, and teamed up with George W. Bush, a man so stupid that he would invent new words and dumb phrases. Bushism was a thing. I'm sure that the human being and fish can coexist. Like, the guy just dropped a clanger about 3 times a week. If you were into satire, you didn't have to make anything up. The jokes just wrote themselves. And at that time, in my college days, I actually presented the Sixth Form Review alongside my good friend Robert, who I know watches this channel sometimes. How you doing, Robert? And we teamed up. He was a great performer, actually, very great actor and great presenter. We were a bit of a double act, and we presented the show as Tony Blair and George W. Bush. He was Tony, I was George, and we were just lampooning them. And George W. Bush really was a figure of hate for me. I really hated the man. And all these years later, he cut such a pathetic figure. You almost feel sorry for him. And even in the speech when he said Iraq instead of Ukraine, he acknowledges that, hey, I'm 75. And it's like, wow, George W. Bush is 75 and still has blood on his hands.